Hello.
Hello.
Hi,
My name is JJ.
And I'm Tim.
I'm Gage.
And we're gonna drink some beer and talk for a little bit. So hope you guys like it. Hope you guys are interested. That's my cue to drink my beer.
All right. So I mean, we don't really have an agenda, I guess, but we're just gonna,
What were we just talking about?
we're talking about computers.
Oh yeah, and your computer started smoking. Continue.
Well, computers started smoking, and there's a thing in the electronics, just like electrical engineering world, where it's sort of a joke where they say it broke because you let the smoke out of it. Like there's magic smoke in the machine, and when you let the magic smoke out, the machine breaks. That's what happened to this computer, unfortunately, is that the magic smoke was let out of the monitor, and we had to get rid of it. Honestly, the PC itself was probably fine, but I was too young at the time to realize that, and we got rid of the whole thing, which is unfortunate.
It's really too bad you couldn't just capture that smoke and push it right back in there.
Yeah, well, the problem is once you let the smoke out, you can't put it back
Oh,
in.
you can't put it back. Got it.
Amen. Ain't that the song of life? What have you been up to, Gage? Gage just got here. Probably what? Actually, when did you get here?
Like right after 7.
Okay.
Yeah, not too long ago. I recently switched over to working nights. I work at a hospital. I'm a nurse. So sort of transitioning there, getting used to completely flipping my schedule. So it's been a little weird, but
How often do you work? Like how many hours?
I work 39 hours a week. So
Gotcha. The reason I asked, I'm getting bumped up too, so I'm
yeah.
trying to see how much it's gonna be.
Yeah, no, I'm a full-time employee there.
So, do you see any crazy COVID stuff at where you work?
Yeah, I've worked on the COVID floor a couple times, 3 times total. I haven't been there in a couple weeks, but yeah, it's pretty it's pretty crazy. You have to dress up in these ridiculous spacesuits whenever we go in any patient's rooms. So we've got like hospital scrubs we put on, and then the 2 pairs of gloves and gown, mask, goggles, hairnet, shoe covers, like the whole gamut.
So you must be a pretty high employee there. I don't know. What do they have, like ranks or what are they?
Yeah, so
Nurse?
I'm a regular staff nurse. So
Okay.
I'm just like the nurse you see on the floor if you're ever in a regular room at the hospital. So I mean, the only people that really I'm going to direct around are like the care techs or phlebotomists or something like that. So
what are those? Can you explain those for me?
yeah, so like a patient care tech is somebody who's going to come in and help, reposition patients, change linens, help get people cleaned up, baths, showers, brush teeth, stuff like that.
Okay.
While we're more there to manage them medically, while the doctor's not on the floor, give them their meds, make sure their condition stays stable and all that sort of stuff, and communicate with the other disciplines in the hospital, like therapies and the physicians and all that. But on nights, it's a little different because there's only like 2 or 3 doctors in the hospital at that time, and no therapy is available and stuff like that. So things are a little bit calmer, but when things do go up, you have to manage a little bit more on your own.
Mhm. So you have to determine sort of like whether their humors are all imbalanced and whether they're phlegmatic or bilious or...
Yeah, so if I need to, make that nursing decision to open them up and, drain a little bit of that phlegm or that bile,
Yeah.
just to get things a little bit more in balance.
How many people are full of shit? Both literally and metaphorically.
Literally, every single person, because if you're in the hospital, there's a great chance that you're either shitting continuously or completely constipated. which is terrible to deal with, especially in the middle of the night. I never like getting those calls at like 3 a.m. and the patient's like, yeah, so this happened. And then you go in there and you've got to completely change the bed sheets and get everybody cleaned up because they can't move. So.
You just take him out back and hose him down.
Dude, that'd be so much easier. It's not a clean job. That's for sure.
That's awesome, man. I'm proud of you. Thankful for you. I know there's a lot of people who, who need, you know, I feel like more people like you talked on here more, you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
I feel like there's a lot of them that don't really do this stuff. I think on Joe Rogan podcast is probably the most, don't you think? Maybe somewhere else. No, but I mean, that's what I listen to them on. Like Dr. Ron or Patrick. Do you guys listen to anything on podcast? You don't need to. I mean, you're a nerd. What about you?
Well, I listen to the local radio show on the podcast format, just because it's a morning show and I don't want to.
What show is it?
The Rizzuto Show.
I don't think I know it.
So,
Tell me about it.
is that 104.9 or 105.7?
105.7.
Yeah.
The Woody show's on 104.9, and it used to be the Woody and Rizzuto
I know,
show.
and they split a couple of years back.
Right, and Woody went to LA, and honestly, I don't really like that show. I was never really a fan of Woody to begin with. In the show, I felt like got a lot better when it was just the Rizzuto show.
I don't know if I just couldn't tell apart or what, but they really seemed the same to me back when I listened to it. I really didn't listen to the morning show all that often, though, back in the day.
I didn't really either, because you're right, they did seem kind of the same to me, and I was like, this is not great. And then they split up, and I was like, oh, one of these guys is actually better than the other. But no, that's probably I think that is the biggest morning show in St. Louis, and it's a top podcast in the country. They just talk about everything, kind of like, I guess, Joe Rogan, but I mean, obviously they don't get high on the air or anything. Yeah.
I mean, I listen to a couple podcasts, but they're all hockey related, so that's really the only topic they cover.
Wait, what stations? I love hockey. I'd rather out this year.
I listen to the Steve Dangle podcast, the Hockey PDO cast, and Greg Wyshynski on ESPN. Those are the three that I listen to.
Okay.
They used to have, I get my sports news from the Riz show because I don't really follow very many sports at all. But every week they used to have Chris Kerber on, the Blues announcer or commentator or whatever.
Yeah.
They used to have him on every Wednesday, and he was always interesting to talk to, or interesting to listen to, rather. But obviously, since their season's over and Blackhawks season's over, he isn't talking to him. But they used to also get like players on the team. In fact, that's their intro to the segment is like, well, since the previous two players we used to talk to got traded, here's Chris Kerber.
That's awesome. I love that. Spin Chicklets, have you guys heard of that?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of their show.
Really, I don't watch them too much. I just hear clips here and there.
I don't know, their shtick isn't really for me. I'm not really into the dude bro side of sports.
Well, some of it's like pretty intense stuff. Like Brian O'Reilly, they were talking about Ryan O'Reilly one time.
Mhm.
Who's our, Ryan O'Reilly.
Yeah,
Right?
he's a sick player.
Yeah, he's insane. I don't know if they had him on, but I saw a clip where they were talking about him, and they're like, I forget exactly what they said, but that dude is a unit. I mean, Conn Smythe, Stanley Cup, something to be reckoned with.
Oh, for sure,
I
yeah.
wish I saw more of their season this year, but I didn't. Well, with COVID, it's like, I don't know, I can't get in like a good groove. I feel like you have to get in a good groove to watch them.
Well, I think
Yeah, you gotta
everyone.
watch them as much as possible. Obviously, to watch more games.
I think everyone's sort of out of their groove.
But also, it's like, damn. Like, I don't know if people stopped watching them because the crowds weren't there. You think that had any impact on it negatively?
I would be interested to see what the television ratings are like.
For the first couple games, I know the exhibition games, like even before they started playing meaningful hockey, when they first entered the bubble, I think there was like 8 million Canadian viewers or something for a game that featured two American teams.
Yeah, and if you don't know, that's like 3/4 the population of Canada.
Yeah. 3/4. It's a little less than a quarter, but it's a lot.
But yeah, that was my other thinking. I was thinking almost that like people were watching more because there was so little going on. There were probably a lot of people that like once sports came back, that's all they were watching. And so many of these sports too, they're playing, back to back to back to back to back. So their games on all the time. You might as well just turn on the TV and see what's on.
Yeah, I mean during the play-in rounds, they were playing 6 games of hockey a day, and there are teams in baseball playing 3 games a day.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a lot of sports on right now.
This beer is so good. I know it's just regular Bud Light, but I love Bud Light. What do you guys think of the seltzer drinks?
Well, I'm more of a traditionalist. When I want to drink a beer, I usually just want a beer. But and I've commented to I think both of you about this before. I've been amazed by the shelf space dedicated to the seltzers recently, these past couple of years, because
Yeah, we were talking about that.
there used to be, just a little section of where the seltzers are, and if you're not in beer sales, like, you may not realize, or just sales in general, like shelf space in such a competitive market like beer, like, is so big. And if you walk into, like, I was at the Deerbergs down the road, and walking through their beer aisle, it seems like
It's like a third of the shelf space
Right.
now. Yeah.
there's a huge section taken up by seltzers, and that just fascinates me. It's amazing how much growth that industry has had.
And even outside of the beer aisles, they'll have those giant Bud Light seltzer displays
Oh
that are
yeah,
just that.
yeah. The features and displays are also big as far as beer sales go. You always really want to make sure that your display is very creative and eye-catching so that people buy your beer. I mean, I guess that's just common sense, but
When I was in my fraternity, we had these drinks, which were fucking amazing, but also just destroyed you. I mean, like Blackout City.
Yeah, like jungle juice stuff.
Yeah.
I mean,
Even
that'll
with that,
do it. A lot of the additives really increase your hangover.
yeah,
like
like sugar.
potency of the hangover is increased by a lot of the additives.
The only recipe I remember from there is the mimosas. But other than that, it's like, fuck it, throw it in.
Well, mimosas are pretty easy to make. It's really about getting that ratio correct between champagne and.
It's like 2/3
orange juice.
champagne and 1/3 orange juice.
I like to just fill up the glass full of champagne and then add maybe a drop of orange juice.
For color, right?
For
Yeah.
color. Also, it makes me not feel as bad about drinking in the morning. So.
Can't argue with that.
Which I think is the purpose of mimosas to begin with, is so that you don't feel very bad drinking in the morning.
Yeah, it's a socially acceptable way to drink at 10 a.m.
Exactly, and it's a great way.
Champagne's good. People sleep on it, I feel like. As like just a regular drink.
That's one industry that is taking a huge hit this past year, is the champagne industry, because
No celebrations.
yeah, so many weddings are being postponed. Yeah, any big gathering with a lot of champagne is being postponed, and they're taking Yeah, huge hit.
I didn't even think about that, but it makes sense.
I'm gonna grab another beer.
All right.
Bring the mic with me. Hello, everyone. This is JJ's sideshow called "Give Me That Beer." Tell me more about this movie, Flight of the Conchords.
Well, it's a TV show, and actually they're a band too, like a real band, but it's a comedy duo that they're extremely talented. They pretty much, I mean,
When was it made?
2008, 2009, I think is the. There were only 2 seasons made of the show.
Gosh, I just need a little bit of context.
Yeah, but they pretty much touch on almost every genre. They have a very wide, I don't know. I don't even know what I'm trying to say, but
Yeah, I mean, so they do like what, 2 songs per episode or something like that.
yeah,
And it's an original song for every episode, but they'll hit all the genres like Tim was saying.
and they work it into the story of the episode.
Yeah.
And they might just randomly break out into song in unexpected moments, but they're hilarious guys. It's really deadpan humor, like they hardly ever crack even a smile, I feel like.
Yeah, like
Have you ever seen the movie Being John Malkovich or Inside John Malkovich?
I've heard of it.
I've heard of it. I haven't seen it either.
It's a good movie.
But yeah, it's extremely deadpan humor. Like, if you're into that, like, even, like, people say that The Office is deadpan. Like, this doesn't even compare how deadpan this is.
Yeah, we watched like a behind the scenes one time, and seeing the 2 main characters laugh and smile in the behind the scenes was weird because they never do it in the actual show.
They never laugh. They never, like...
That's how it was. Yeah, that's how it was for Office too. That's really cool.
But, like,
I see it.
yeah, they're these 2 guys. They're just sheep farmers from New Zealand is their backstory in the show, not in real life. But they decide to go to New York City to make it big in America as a novel New Zealand band, but they always get stuck because they don't understand American culture. They're not really... They're kind of... aren't accepted because people don't really know what New Zealand even is. They just think it's basically Australia or it doesn't exist.
And they're always being ridiculed by the Australians in the show.
The Australians are always making fun of them. Their technology is completely backwards.
Yeah, there's a running joke that they're like 30 or 40 years behind technology-wise in New Zealand throughout the show.
Yeah, he'll like, or their manager, who also works at the New Zealand consulate, and does their managing on the job. He will like hand them a VHS tape and call it a DVD or something.
There's a lot of artists though in real life, for real, that actually come out of just like absolutely terrible situations. Like,
I know these guys are from New Zealand, so
Who do you think is the most impressive rags to riches musician?
well, that's a tough one. I mean, when I think of that, I don't know. I mean, a lot of, especially early singers, early like jazz, blues, rock and roll musicians came from, really blighted areas and sort of forgotten about, struggled to make it where they are.
Who?
Well, I don't know.
Who do you think? Roy Buchanan is the first person that comes to my mind.
Yes, I don't know if this is necessarily the worst situation to come out of, but My favorite band is Rush, and the lead singer, his parents were Holocaust survivors. So I mean, that's quite the situation to go from them escaping Nazi Germany, living through the Holocaust, and for their son to become an internationally recognized musician.
Yeah, also,
So
this Roy Buchanan guy, he was from a real strict farm, and he was like 16, and he was just like, I'm leaving, I'm out of here. And he goes and he makes it huge in the jazz scene. And then he was like just popping, like insane. I love his music. Roy Buchanan. I forget. I was just listening to it last night at this wedding, but the name I forget it. It was like "Help Me Change My Mind" or something like that. And I've listened to it 1,000 times. I just don't know the name. And yeah, check him out. Roy Buchanan, awesome. But then he went to prison for drugs, and then committed suicide in prison. So that was like rags to riches to rags, yeah, which sucks. But oh, I mean, he left his mark, that's for sure.
Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of tragic stories like that in music, especially. I feel like.
Amy Winehouse, Jimi Hendrix,
Kurt Cobain.
Kurt Cobain.
I mean, what is it like the 27 years old? Yeah.
Yeah,
27 Club, yeah.
spooky stuff. Sends shivers down your spine.
Body aching all the time.
What's that from?
Bohemian Rhapsody.
It completely came out of left field from where I was going. Like, shivers down your spine.
My
What was it? I don't even remember what it was. I was like, what?
It's the lyrics of Bohemian Rhapsody.
my dad was listening to a Jimmy Buffett concert from 2019 earlier today.
Sounds like
yeah, it sounds like him. But I guess they will sometimes do a Bohemian Rhapsody cover. It's completely instrumental and it's on the ukulele. I didn't hear it, but it sounds really strange.
Can only imagine. All those Chipmunk, Reed, Duel.
Oh boy,
I love them.
that was such a terrible fad.
Reed Duels. How do you say that? But
Yeah.
yeah, it was.
You say that it's a fad, but like
Are people still making them?
the Chipmunks themselves, like Alvin and the Chipmunks, that started as a novelty song in like the 60s. And every decade they come out with a new thing that revitalizes this terrible genre.
Yeah, fair enough. I was just thinking of like early YouTube where everything had a awful
Yes.
Chipmunks
Why is
version.
it so good? But I listen to it. I'm like, why?
Yeah.
I'm like mad, but I'm not. I'm conflicted.
Remember, what was it, Fred? That guy?
Mm.
Yeah. That was a similar thing.
Yeah, I could not tell you what I saw in that. I don't know why I thought it was so funny.
I was never really a fan. I was like, why is this guy? This is just. Yeah. But we've discussed this before. I became cynical at a very early age.
That is true. Yeah, you did.
What were we talking about?
Fred, that guy, he was a YouTuber. He got like 3 movies.
Yeah, with like John Cena.
What? When was he in a movie with John Cena?
Back in
It
like
was,
what 2008 or something like that,
Yeah,
probably.
that might have been when the first one came out.
Yeah.
And like every couple of years after, he had like 3 movies. And yeah, Fred the movie is with John Cena.
All is he in it? That's like 2 polar opposite sides of the spectrum.
You would think, but John Cena does weird things.
I feel like he just does whatever movie will let him be in it.
Yeah. He's not, I don't know if he's really moved into acting the same way as like The Rock has.
The Rock is a champ.
Yeah, I would definitely say I wouldn't put them in the same caliber.
He hasn't quite made that transition.
Great guy though, not a great actor.
There's one Dwayne The Rock Johnson movie that I didn't like. I'm sure he's trying to get past it, and I should not be blowing sugar on him because I love him. But Scorpion King was just not for me.
When
You guys see that?
When did that come out?
No.
I don't know when it came out, but it was.
Last 10
Well,
years?
yeah, I was really young, so it might be a little bit better now. But I remember just going, "What the hell is going on?" I could have just been dumb though.
I don't know. I feel like that happened to a lot of movies when I was young, but like looking back, they might have been better than what I gave them credit for.
Have you seen V for Vendetta?
Once.
Was it at Desmet?
No, it was a long time ago.
Okay, Desmet's our high school, by the way. Everyone's high school here.
Yep.
Did you like watch it? Did you take like film there and watch it?
Well, I think it was either English or film, but I've seen it like 10 times.
Which teacher?
I don't remember. Let's see. Maybe, I think it was Mr. Kavanaugh.
No, see, it was in film then.
GOAT English teacher. Actually, they were all good. Hutchinson was good.
Was there more than one Kavanaugh?
Mr. No, wait.
Kavanaugh with the crazy hair?
I didn't think his hair was crazy.
Was it kind of crazy?
Like Dr. Kavanaugh? Am I thinking of a different person?
Who am I thinking of?
Mr. Kavanaugh.
I have no idea.
Kavanaugh with a K. Kavanaugh was a house at Desmet.
We didn't have houses when we were
Really?
there.
I thought we were in houses freshman year. Oh, I think you guys got them or your senior year. But by senior year, you guys probably like.
If they assigned us houses, I was not aware.
Yeah, I don't remember that either.
I remember my brothers talking about it when they were, I was like, what the hell, like Gryffindor?
No, all those games are fun. I remember one where it was like a White Castle eating contest. Oh my gosh. There was like 500 freaking burgers after
It sounds like
the
something
thing.
that would
We all
happen
got
at
free
Desmet.
desserts. It was amazing. It was
that
like that though.
that passed up
Or whatever.
our year, I guess, too.
I thought you guys had that. But I must be wrong. Evola. He was the other one.
Yeah,
Mm.
Mr. Evola, yeah.
He was great. I loved him.
My favorite quote from him was, Tim Baxdale, are you eating a donut? And I was.
He made everything so interesting.
He was always getting on, who sat in front of me? Seamus or whatever. Always drinking Kool-Aid in class.
Yeah, he was a good guy. Really smart guy.
Who was Deacon Olmsted? Doesn't he know like how many languages does he know?
I don't even know. I saw him with something. He was walking around with a book that was written in Arabic or something. And my mom was like, can you read Arabic? And he's like, I know a little.
I had a professor in college that spoke 8 languages.
It's like, oh, that sounds about right. But like, and he was reading, yeah, some Arabic religious texts, but he was also like really into baseball. I think I told you that. But like, he has several published books on the history of baseball.
Wow, that's unexpected.
You know how many sales they have?
I have no idea what his sales look like.
Really kind of interesting to know.
But
There's a lot of great characters that.
if you talk to him about baseball, he would just go on and you could ask him anything about the history of Cardinals baseball, baseball in St. Louis in general. Did you know that before the Cardinals, they were the Perfectos?
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't there a Browns at one time?
The Browns left recently in the 50s.
That was recently.
I mean,
In terms of baseball history,
yeah.
When did it start? Like 1800?
1870s? Is that
Yeah.
when the first team started coming around?
Yeah, probably organized teams. But before the Cardinals were the Perfectos, I believe that they were the Brown Stockings. And then we got a different team that were the Browns later.
The brown stockings. What kind of stockings are we talking about?
Well, that's what all of the teams were named after. Like Red Sox, White Sox, it was the White Stockings. It was the Red Stockings.
Really? Who were those? I never heard this.
Yeah, so the Red Stockings became the Red Sox in Boston, and the White Stockings became the Cubs in Chicago, and then they got a new White Sox team. I don't know when, but sometime later.
Yeah.
And that's where?
Chicago.
Okay.
I mean,
I don't know
they
that well.
when they're referring to stockings, they're referring to socks.
Right.
Yeah.
So how many colors were there? Just 3 and then 2?
No, I'm sure that there were plenty of other colors. Those are just
The ones that
well-known-
stuck around.
Yeah, known ones. But yeah, I mean, yeah, baseball has been around for quite some time, and it's been evolving. But like when it was organized in the United States was probably pretty close to after the Civil War, because a lot of
I mean, it was significant enough that I remember it being mentioned in like history class.
Yeah, well, there were a few former slaves that actually were baseball players in national leagues
That's awesome.
until they were ousted into their own Negro League, and then Jackie Robinson later broke that color barrier down the line. But
Fun fact: everybody was wearing 42 today in
I did see
for
that.
the MLB
Did you
game.
see Adam Wainwright pitching?
Yeah, he pitched 9 innings.
Yeah, complete game,
Wow.
and it was
For
his
the
birthday.
First time in 4 years.
Did you hear it was his birthday?
Yeah, he's 39 now.
Wait, why were they wearing 42?
For Jackie Robinson in honor of Jackie Robinson.
Is it Jackie Robinson's birthday?
I don't know what it is.
It's probably just in relation to everything that's been going on with
Yeah.
all the sports leagues shutting down for a couple
I
days.
think that they do something in memoriam, every year. I think it might just be one day, but with everything shifted to, I don't know if they're doing a longer thing, but yeah, it could be any number of things. I have no idea.
So look that up later. Jackie Robinson. Cheers to Jackie Robinson.
Yes, I
On his day, whatever it may
finished my beer.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, if you haven't seen the movie 42 about Jackie Robinson, it's also incredible.
be. I want to see that. I haven't seen it. Have you?
I have not. I thought it was about the meaning of life.
That's a different movie.
Guardian? No, not Guardians of the Galaxy. What is it?
Hitchhiker's Guide.
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Sorry. I only got like 5 pages into that book. I heard it's really good though.
I need to read that book. Thomas Simroth recommended that to me about 6 or 7 years ago.
That sounds about right.
And,
Don't you work with him now?
No, he didn't get the job.
Oh yeah,
It was
he
unfortunate.
he interviewed there. That's what it was.
Yeah, it was unfortunate, but yeah, I had already used up my poll on someone else to try to get them the job, and then they didn't interview well at all.
Oh, whoops.
So I already felt like I didn't feel like it was my place to make it a second hustle and bustle in HR.
Alright, now that I get my mug plug all back in, I'm ready to go.
Were we not ready to go before?
Yeah, I was, plugging the thing in.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I was forgetting something. So who's this guy?
Oh, it's a guy we went to school with.
Where did you get a job at?
Right now, the last time I spoke to him, which was about almost a year ago now, shoot. But he was working at CenturyLink as a contractor there. But he was looking to get a salary position at another company, and one of the companies that reached out to him was my company. But for some reason, they said that he was qualified, but they didn't have a place for him. I don't really know what that means.
Huh.
But yeah,
Weird.
What company was it? Oh, CenturyLink.
CenturyLink, yeah.
Never mind.
Oh,
That was tough. I don't know why. Wait, what's the guy's full name?
Should we say his full name on the podcast?
Should we
Or?
not?
I don't know. I don't know if he wants to be dragged in.
Oh my gosh. Alright, I guess not. If we should have it say it, then we probably shouldn't say it.
I had classes with him, like multiple classes a semester, every year for 4 years,
Yeah.
and he could never remember my name.
Well, you have a very common name.
Oh yeah, I know, right?
Wait, why are we disclosing priests' names and teachers' names, but not students' names?
Yeah, they're a public figure. To the extent that he's concerned.
It's a private school.
Yeah, but I mean, to the extent that we are.
That's true. Well, I don't think I guess Kavanaugh was a priest. Definitely Kavanaugh, but anyway, never mind. I guess so, whatever. I'm tired, dude. I worked 8 hours today, over 8 hours, and I have 8 hours to go tomorrow. And I had a wedding last night, and a rehearsal dinner before that.
Wow.
A lot of stuff.
You've just been going.
And I'm drinking a beer.
Well, beer makes everything better. Right?
Oh yeah. Guys.
I don't want to look like the only alcoholic.
Nurse kids, tell me everything is made alright.
What's your medical opinion on beer? It's good for you, right?
They have certain recommendations. I don't follow them.
Well, they have certain recommendations on like how much sugar and fat you should eat too, but like.
Yeah, just go with what your heart desires. That's the true.
And as my heart is becoming enlarged.
Saying your heart will desire it, and desire it, and desire it, then it'll beat weird, and then you die.
Jeez.
I think the beating weird can happen for a longer period of time. I think you're simplifying the process.
Well,
We've come a long
I guess
way.
it depends on how weird it beats.
Or what's
I've got
happening.
insurance, just put a pacemaker in or something and we'll be fine.
Pacemaker can only do so much, buddy, and for only certain things. Plus, then you can't go through like magnets and stuff. It's trouble at the airport.
I don't fly very much anyway. Although I wouldn't mind flying more to like go to places. I just haven't had the money before.
Where would you go?
I don't know. East Coast, West Coast,
Jeez.
Europe.
Around.
Just where I don't know.
There do be pretty though.
I've never been to New York or LA. Like, feel like I should at least visit. They don't sound like places I'd want to live permanently, but like.
From personal experience, New York is pretty cool. I have never heard anything good about LA.
I mean, as far as LA goes, I've heard the weather's nice. Although
It's like 100 degrees all the time, and there's pollution everywhere, and things are on fire.
Well, that's just California in general, I think.
I guess most of it.
I don't know. I mean, obviously, there's something going on there for being the second largest city in the country and one of the top 10 largest cities on the continent.
Who do you think?
The Americas in general, not just North America, I should say.
We got our problems too. Who do you think should be held most responsible for that? The governor or the president?
For what?
The well-being of your state. Who do you think has the most moral
Well,
weight on their shoulders?
as far as that goes, I mean, the governor has direct powers over the state. The president can't really do anything state-wise on the state level.
But he could make business booming in the United States. Whether it is or not is another question, but
Yeah,
I
but
think he does have some.
I mean, as a federation, as the United States is we have a pretty robust system of checks and balances and separation of powers. And as far as the federal government goes, they've been, over the past 200 years, been intruding on the individual lives of the private citizens more and more.
But
However,
the majority of the population looks at the president.
they do, but he doesn't have the power to do certain things that I think the majority of the population would think that he does.
Well, you can get the people's vote, and I think he
Yeah,
definitely.
but that's actually, I mean, with the Electoral College, again, that's not necessarily important. Because of the separation of powers and the fact that everything is done between, you vote as a state and you vote, you know, there's a reason why we have a Senate and a House of Representatives. One represents the population, one represents the states. And the Electoral College sort of merges those two ideas to elect a president. And so as far as the popularity among the individual citizens, I mean, obviously Trump knows that that's not important because he got elected.
He got elected
Right.
with under 50% of the vote.
So, yeah, I mean, it does seem counterintuitive, but there's a reason why it's set up that way. And as far as who has more direct effect on your day-to-day life, I would argue the governor probably does.
Okay. I think a lot of the federal stuff definitely takes a long time to process. You know, like the process takes forever. I think on the governor's side, it's more kind of like short.
Well, the governor's obviously dealing with a smaller population. There are, what, 8 million people in Missouri?
How long does
And
it take to get something?
there are 350 million in the U.S.
How long does it take to get something through that? Like a law or an ordinance?
I mean, it really depends on the makeup of the House and the Senate, and
It depends also on the popularity of the law, just in general.
Yeah.
Whether it. I
How
mean,
often do they hold elections?
there are elections happening every year.
yeah. So what, House is every 2 years, Senate is every 6.
What about the state level?
It depends on the state.
Okay.
Because
What about for us? Missouri. Missourians, listen up.
Well, our governor is elected every 4 years, and I mean we have a myriad of elections, like on the local and state level.
I say I've voted like 6 times this year so far. Participate in your local and state government, everybody.
Yeah, I agree, because that again has way more control on your day-to-day life than these national elections, which. Definitely vote in those too, because that's how we are viewed on the broad scale as a country in the world, and will definitely impact you as far as and the bigger picture of the economy as a whole in like 10 years. But if you want action now, look at your local and state representatives.
Damn it! Why aren't these people freaking voting? Ah, nothing will get them to vote. How many times have I heard that?
Well, you get a little sticker that says I voted. You can show it off to your friends to make everyone say, hey, that guy voted.
Yeah.
I should feel worse about myself because I didn't vote.
You should.
Ah, they're all douchebags. If you vote, you're a douche.
I've never really heard that sentence.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen that. Have you ever?
You think people have thought it though?
Maybe. I'm sure that, I mean...
There's
we
got to
have
be
a-
some people who
There's
have.
gotta be
We have a really diverse country, so I feel like
Like
a lot of diverse ideas and opinions. I mean,
We can
even just
get
looking
people
at
to vote.
current events, we
We give
know...
them shit.
I don't
I mean...
I don't know if we should incentivize people to vote through like gifts. It doesn't seem like the best idea.
I mean, honestly...
Yeah, they get spoiled.
Well-
Like, yeah, well now if you give me 2 gifts on my vote.
Not so much as that, as opposed to sort of some moral, legal, or moral, ethical dilemma there.
Well, and also, like, as far as gifts go, there are definitely legal considerations.
Yeah, I'll say.
Like,
How much they pay for it?
yeah, you definitely can't be an elected official and be like, I'll give you money if you vote for me.
Or even, I'll give you money if you vote at all.
Yeah, I don't think that that's cool either.
No, I wouldn't think so.
But honestly, and we spend a lot of money on these I voted stickers, but
Right.
there is some efficacy in people like, oh, I should vote because that person has a sticker.
It's a reminder, if anything.
Yeah. So I think in the long run, those are just a cheap, fun way to possibly get people to vote.
Yeah. If anything, the better way to get people to vote is to make at least the national election a federal holiday so that people have a chance to go to the polls and
Yeah.
aren't, trapped by their job and can't make it to the polls to vote since they're open
Yeah.
at bad
I mean, that's-
times. Get
that's-
more polling stations available in areas that don't have them available,
And that's kind of sucky because you got like an employer is legally required to give you time to vote, but like they're not legally required to pay you when you use that time to vote.
Yeah.
So,
And you're living paycheck to paycheck and you really take a day off to go vote.
yeah.
Plus, then you got to use your time off to do that, and well, I guess not necessarily if they're legally required to, but I don't know how that would sort of play out in terms of.
I don't know.
All of
They're
it,
supposed to be like they can't schedule you the entire day so that you have no opportunity for the polls.
But yeah, there's a lot of problems with it that we could solve just by moving some things around. But
Yeah, and again, and this is a pro and con of the current system we've set up. We can make it a federal holiday, but that's only going to affect the federal elections. Make it a state holiday, and that'll affect the state elections. But what about your local election for your mayor and stuff?
yeah,
It's,
How often is that?
well, it depends on your city. Right now, we are in beautiful Chesterfield, Missouri, population roughly 45,000.
I don't know if I'd use beautiful, but go ahead.
Some parts of it.
Some parts of How often?
I have no idea. I just moved here.
Oh, shit. I think we should have a online voting system where it's a government-made platform like Facebook or YouTube, but you have to register it, kind of like how you do when you go on E-Trade. You gotta have your address, everything, or any stock market brokerage. Then you can track down whoever's voting, have it online. Then the officials can look into it, or maybe even have it public, and,
Well-
and have people's reputations on the line for who they vote for. That way, there's more emotional investment in it.
Well,
It's pretty out there, but it makes sense.
here's the thing. We have a pretty strong history of anonymity at the ballots, so you wouldn't be.
Yeah, it'd definitely be from left field. We're grabbing another beer. Anyone want one?
I would almost worry though that with that we aren't letting people express their opinions because there's a lot of peer pressure on who you vote for.
I think the more open we are, though, the better off we'll be.
But I really think
No beers for everyone?
Oh, I'll have beer.
I'm okay.
All right.
I think that the anonymous voting is really the way we want to go so that you aren't, I mean, they can't be any like, there aren't legal repercussions with your employer or
What do you
your
mean?
friend group or whatever, like because you're in a protected, they can't fire you at your job because you voted for Trump or something.
It'd be pretty intense. I feel like if that did happen, though, whoever did that would get a lot of shit, right? It happens now.
Potentially. I mean, legally you can't do that, but at the same time, like, there's no legal protection for getting shit from your boss because he doesn't like that you voted for this candidate. Now, that's where the anonymous voting comes into play. Like, it's supposed to protect people, especially people who are in minority groups that don't want to be persecuted for their belief system, but still want their beliefs to be represented in the legislature. Definitely need to have a way for them to safely speak their opinion.
Can't you just be like, dude, it's one vote. Give it a break. We'll see. I don't know. I'm just on this side. Bro, I'm just trying to work, get my money. You may be right, you may be wrong. This is what I thought. That's good.
We
Why
get
would they do that?
But I think people are people, and they are still. I mean, you think we have problems now based on what people think the other person's opinions are? What if you've got it written on paper and you can shove it in their face and that sort of thing? Like,
I think we could teach people how to humiliate them. You'd be like,
I don't know
bro,
if mass
why
humiliation.
don't you run? Why don't you go up there and run?
I don't know if mass humiliation is the best way to build a
I mean, if
camaraderie
and
and
give someone shit for someone's political opinions, they could at least go up and run. They can go up in public and say something and try to influence the mass of people and see how they're.
but and freedom of speech is so
Accept.
at core with our society, and even based on like out of the quote unquote free countries, we have some pretty lax laws when it comes to freedom of speech. Like a lot of European countries will restrict even just like hate speech and that sort of thing. We don't want to suppress anyone's opinions at all. It's until it becomes action where you start.
if you want to publicly be a Nazi, I guess you can do that.
You can.
Yeah,
And
why do we put people who mass murder people like that 17-year-old kid just did? Why don't we put people like that? But in the moral standpoint, like making fun of a group of people or a mass of people, why don't we put them on blast like we do that kid?
because this may not be the popular opinion, but
I think
even a mass shooter has rights.
And I don't know if that would even lead to positive change if you just try to alienate people even more. You just might drive even more people to commit
And
atrocities.
stranger things have happened where the court of public opinion was like, that guy is evil, that guy is the worst, and it turns out that guy did nothing wrong.
I think if the mass of people could elect someone who was good at tormenting those people, whether they believed in doing it or not themselves, that in the long run, it would have a positive change. That way, not every person would have to be educated on it, but rather one big figure.
I think
I feel like you're running into sort of a more autocratic style government that we've been trying to move away from.
You could multiply the voice of good with voting through one person who was specifically designed to publicly scar them. Scars heal, it's emotions. Everyone can come over anything. I believe that.
I mean,
But do
scars.
people need to feel the pain?
I mean,
a little bit?
scars.
If there's the fear of it never healing, I mean, because you would never be forgiven if you didn't change. And if there was a little bit of change, you could leverage that into multiple times of change if that person continued to grow in experience in tormenting people towards doing the right thing. But that person would definitely be under some criticism. Am I wrong?
I think we could just look at the U.S. prison systems to realize that tormenting people to do the right thing is actually not very effective in
I
doing
think
that.
publicly, though, it would be different because
Okay, so
because I think it's easy if all of your sins or whatever you want to call them, your crimes are private. But if it was publicly out there, you would have to actually change, because if it was private, you can just rebirth yourself. You could change your entire identity and start over and act like this new human. You could change your name, change your face, change your profile, change everything, and have it be fine. But
is that wrong if someone had already served their punishment and decided that what they did was wrong, and they decided, I'm going to start anew?
I don't think it's wrong, but I think there's a better way of doing it.
So I feel like what you're describing is like sanctioned cancel culture, and we already, like, at least in my opinion, like, cancel culture, for one, I don't think it's completely real, and it doesn't work either if it is real.
Well,
Like, these people, hold on a second. So
Do you
people,
think they have more pressure on them?
I feel like they do have pressure on them, but do these people change? They normally don't, and then they stay in the same position that they are already. Like, it's not super often that, you know, somebody gets canceled and then they don't come back without having really changed at all.
There's that, but then also when you put that sort of idea within one individual as an elected official, because there are a lot of times where someone gets quote unquote canceled, and like, you're like, well, what that guy did doesn't sound like it was wrong necessarily, but I could see how some people would disagree with it. I don't know if it's worth losing his job over. Now, you put that into one individual who's publicly, quote unquote, tormenting someone. I mean, let's look at the U.S. population as a whole, and I bet if we did a survey on everyone, see, do you trust your local politician? The vast majority of people would say no. And I think that's a good thing. We should not trust the people we put in charge, so that we're always continually reevaluating.
So you're agreeing with me a little bit.
No.
Especially not when that person is judge, jury, and executioner on this.
Exactly.
Well, there could be multiple people, and it'd all be public, so, I mean, the people would literally be affecting that person's life, whether they are wearing it or not. Like, if there was a title, labeled judge, kind of like they are now.
Right.
If it was more like this, they would not be true to themselves. They literally feel like someone who they're not portraying themselves to be.
I am just a little concerned that this system has sort of already been tried before in medieval Europe.
Say we had stockades, and those didn't work, and now we don't have them anymore.
And yeah, and
What's a stockade?
where you put someone who's done something wrong, quote unquote, into like shackles in the middle of the public town square, and people can, you know, just go up, humiliate them, taunt them.
Have their
Throw
way.
tomatoes at them?
Yeah. That's what
I
they do in the
think this is-
cartoons, but I imagine
It was
they were throwing other things.
Much worse in real life.
That's tough, because that person definitely, they're on there forever and they can't escape, and that's like physically painful.
It's physically painful, it's mentally, you know, it's degrading, it's humiliating. That is definitely going to stick with that person. But is that actually going to cause them to reform, or is that going to cause them to resent you?
Yeah, say further alienate people.
And it's just going to create a cycle of, well, you don't actually have my back, and so I'm just going to keep doing that wrong thing that I was doing.
Say, and like, what are rates of like like people going back to prison?
Recidivism?
Yeah, it's like 70% or something, right?
Yeah,
If you've been in for, you know, some lengthy amount of time.
people who keep going to prison keep going to prison. They get out, they go back in. They get out, they go back in. Because they're not actually being reformed in any way.
It's just punishment. Punishment isn't a good learning tool. Like, we established that a long time ago in psychology.
But our current system is based on retribution. It's a retributionist sort of attitude. And there are a lot of countries, and I don't necessarily like citing other countries saying, oh, we should do it their way because it seems like it's working for them. It's really hard to compare cultures against each other like that. But it's much easier, I think, when you realize across cultures this is working. When people take a more reformist attitude towards prisoners and people who've done wrong, where we sort of train them to do how to function properly in society.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I think we'd be able to move further, have less overall crime if people, aren't essentially encouraged to recommit crimes once they've been released.
And there's a lot of reform happening now and in the past several years, actually. With our prosecutors, prosecuting attorneys and that sort of thing, and police reform, and a lot of it's good, a lot of it, I think we're moving in the right direction, but obviously there's a lot of more room for change. There's also a lot of room for, I think as a country, we should always be evaluating ourselves and evaluating our practices to make sure that we're being fair. Sort of extends to the system of checks and balances, the re-electing of public officials so that people aren't installed for life, constantly reevaluating our decisions so that we make sure that everything is going correctly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to stick on topic of prisons, but if we can decrease arrest quotas, the fact that that exists whatsoever is kind of ridiculous. Deprivatize prisons because prisons shouldn't have the incentive of making a profit. It really doesn't make any sense when it comes to trying to reform people and have an overall less criminal population and all that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And like everything, unfortunately, that all comes down to money.
Yeah.
A lot of the reasons privatized in the first place is because we're not investing enough in these prison systems. We're like, oh, these are criminals, they don't have any rights. It shouldn't matter. But they're people too.
Yeah, I feel like people forget that even if you've committed a crime, you're still a person, you should still have rights. I had a long conversation with one of my sisters about how when you go to prison, losing your right to vote is not a viable punishment. She was trying to convince me that she thought that should be how things work. And I'm like, really think about that for a little bit. Do you think that's fair? Should this person lose their right to be represented just because they committed a crime?
I agree. I think every person should be able to represent themselves in every right. Freedom of speech.
Right, you're almost taking away their freedom of speech, their freedom of expression.
Yeah.
Because without representation, they don't have expression necessarily. So, yeah. I mean, now, we didn't have this originally, but universal suffrage, everyone having the right to vote, is such a big thing to make sure that everyone is properly represented. And it's got to be done properly. I mean, obviously, you've got different gerrymandering and stuff that's used as statistics, but
yeah,
at its core, it's definitely what you need.
Change, you mean?
Universal representation, everyone being able to speak their mind and without necessarily consequence from the government.
And it becoming, or it being practical for them to be able to do it as well. I mean, the law can be in place, but if it's not practical and available conveniently for certain populations, then they might as well not have the ability to do it whatsoever.
Yeah, that's true.
I think the idea of prison system is just pretty harsh in general. I think if it was in the hands of the people.
Yeah, well, and it's supposed to be, I mean, as a government-run institution, it's supposed to be in the hands of the people. I mean, the government itself is allegedly in the hands of the people. So, I don't necessarily think prison system has to be a scary thought.
I think it should be a scary thought if you do something that you know is wrong. That's how I think it should be.
Potentially, but I mean, again, the problem comes down to people obviously aren't scared of the prisons as much as they should be because they're still committing crimes that will land them into prison.
Yeah, if these fear tactics work, we wouldn't have criminals.
I don't think we have one quite like the Majoran paradigm. I think the Majoran paradigm is the biggest revolution in psychology that will ever be.
What will the Majoran paradigm do that the current prison system isn't doing?
Unite everyone under a view of right and wrong. That's the same. Meaning, it's like weight that you carry if it's something wrong. That drags you away from every good thing that there is, like being able to party as hard as people who have clear consciences party. Being able to perform, have sex, everything. All that stuff weighs on you all the time, 24/7. I think if it was widely known that people could make it 10 times better, that they would.
Don't you think?
Just with a little bit of readjustment. That's what we gotta do. That's what we gotta figure out with the Majoran paradigm.
Don't you think that with all the restrictions that are in place in prisons, you can't settle down and have like a family life? You can't hold a job. You can't do. They've restricted all of that stuff already.
Right. Well, I think definitely everyone wants to be together. And, you know, if some things weighing someone down, say if the Majoran paradigm goes through, and it's weighing them down, I think the person just constantly taking everything that's weighing down on them, on the person, the people that they love, like their wives, their family, that's worse than them being burdened by a good cause and freeing those people back to the citizens of good standing.
So just
Then, you know what I mean?
to make sure I'm understanding this right. So you're saying people should, it'll weigh on you'll sort of self-regulate. Sort of it'll weigh on your conscience and you can regulate yourself making your own moral decisions as opposed to somebody else imposing their morality on you.
I think it already happens, yeah. Cancel culture is a good attempt at it. It's not very good. You know, it's effective, I should say. I mean, it's a good
It can be
step
good.
forward,
I mean,
but I don't think it's the last step.
as far
The
as
Majoran paradigm is far. If everyone had that over their head and in their, you know, like on their chest, and it was ingrained into society, it'd definitely be a lot better.
But don't you think? I mean, like you said, people are already doing what's in their conscience. They're already doing what they think they should do.
So how would we align everybody to one moral compass? I feel like that'd be the biggest hurdle to overcome.
I really think the only way to do it is, I mean,
Because like
there's two sides. There's agreeing with it and not. And I think the more people weigh on the people who don't agree with it, I think that's how it's got across. It's difficult to wrestle with, but that's the point. You know what I mean? Like stirring it up and causing this kind of scene is what's the way.
I mean,
And I think, here's the thing, sorry.
Yeah.
It could go easily, and it could go very poorly, within a person's decision, It can be an easy decision, and it can be a hard one. How you react to it, too, is a reflection of self, or a reflection of who you are as a person. So the more people we get to agree with it, the clearer and clearer it'll be. It's either going to go one way or the other. Everyone's against it, or everyone's for it. But for everyone to be against it, everyone would have to have an internal compass of bad, not good, which I just...
Here's my thinking of this. Let's look at even just modern history, the past 2,000 years, all right? Time and time again, there's a dominant morality that comes into play that marginalizes a minority sort of morality. And yet those things persist. Those minorities persist. And they become majorities in different areas. And then they persecute the minority that was the majority in the other country. And as far as morality goes, not in relation to any race or anything. So just looking at medieval Europe and how you have Catholic countries and Protestant countries. And the Catholic countries are obviously persecuting the Protestants, and the Protestants are obviously persecuting the Catholics. It's not changing their minds. These religions still exist. What are we going to do differently to get people on our side? I mean, even modern day with the Islamic states, you've got codified laws and religion intertwined, where if you break a religious law, you're breaking the actual legal law. What are we, and that's still not preventing people. I mean, Jews are persisting in these areas. Christians are persisting in these areas. They're doing it anyway. Why? What are we going to do different?
Not focused on it. I think it's focused on this entity, God, in our conscience. But to target the entire conscience as a whole for each action, that's a completely different concept. Now, I think some are more acceptable than others. What route we should take first, I don't know. I think we should maybe take murder, eradicate all the murderers, and then once we hit a certain... But here's the thing. All the people who have done those actions, we don't know how many there is, so you can't really put a number. All you can do is wear that on your sleeve.
Can you clarify what you mean by eradicate for me?
Well, I think there's a lot of people, repeat offenders, who are very likely to repeat again if something doesn't stop them. That's what we're trying to make with the majority paradigm. It's like almost a force field on anyone who doesn't want to get murdered, doesn't want to get raped, blah, 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 to someone with that intention of the future. And the only way I think you can leverage it is if there was just a brand on you that said, this is what the majority thinks. You are not part of the majority. You are lower than the majority for murdering people. Start there. How deep you want to go with it is pretty hard. But if something's on your mind 24/7, that's a good hint that it's like, wow, that's wrong. Plain and simple. Other stuff, though, I think that's more like stuff you can brush off. Like, if you're alone and you're thinking oh man, this person doesn't like that I like the Cardinals, you can brush that off. Even though they're kind of sitting on your head, if you will.
I mean,
weighing you down.
To me,
still feel like fuck off, and you never think about them or care about them ever again.
To me, the Cardinals are a hobby, as I think any sort of sports fanaticism should be. It shouldn't become a religion. But what what if there came a point where I said, you're a Cubs fan, and that disgusts me so much, like morally. I think that is morally wrong.
If someone said that, I'd be like, all right, buddy, the Cubs suck too, so calm down. They win like, what, 0.6? I don't even, see, I'm not a baseball fan, so I don't know this shit. I hope no one sits on my head like, fuck it, I might be in that
I mean, historically, the Cubs have
scope
sucked.
right now.
However,
But I'm just saying, I mean, come on, who does that? Who, like, that, I mean,
You say that.
You say it jokingly, but it's like,
you say that, but we've fought wars over sillier things.
but dude, so many people would be shitting on that person.
You say
that it would
that.
not happen.
But we fight wars over silly things.
I think if people are smart enough to understand that they can weigh on someone with this, that they're smart enough to understand that it can come back on them, and that they shouldn't do it because they want to be free from all of that.
I think, I don't
Ridicule.
know, I feel like you might be giving people too much credit.
I think
In the past,
well, we gotta at least try.
in the past 100,000 years of humanity, and from the very moment man became cognizant that he was man and that he was in control of his domain, that he knew what was right and wrong, there have been disagreements. And
But that's God. We're talking about God. Like, if you're like, oh, God told me to do this.
I'm not even talking
God told me to fucking kill my son, which he kind of did to Abraham.
I'm not even talking
you
about
can't-
God.
Like, if God's in the picture, then you're like, okay, well, I guess God did that. He's more powerful. I don't know who God
but
is.
I'm not talking about God.
I guess it's fine.
I'm talking about you and I.
I know. That's why I'm saying, if you had the Majoran paradigm, just blow people out of the water and be like, oh, God told me to do this. It'd be so much better.
Potentially. I mean, it would be better if it would be better. I
Just to
mean,
be everywhere. I think if we told people, think about life with the Majoran paradigm.
it would be
And
better.
if we spread that, then it would just like, oh. Then every time they think about it, it's like, oh, I thought about it. I can't think about it. Oh no, it's in my head. That's what's gonna happen. It's gonna be like that, dude. This is here.
I think
it's already happening.
I think no one would argue. It's objective.
I say
You can't argue. It's
It's
there.
it's
That's
objective.
the genius
If
of it.
everyone thought the same way, of course there would be harmony. There would
if
be,
we had a completely homogenous society, there would be nothing.
What the fuck does homogenous mean?
everyone thinking the same way,
Yeah.
everyone's exactly the same.
Well, not everyone's gonna think the exact same.
Well, if people, once you start that little bit of people start thinking differently, then once you say that people aren't going to think the exact same way,
People think differently all the time. You
Exactly.
said it, like all the Protestants, Catholics.
exactly,
And that caused a lot of strife throughout history.
Yeah, but
It's
this is
causing
like
strife now.
like fucking revolution. You know what I mean? Like this is a new factor.
But everyone, when they came up with something new, said that this was a revolution going to change.
So this is pretty spot on, I think. Blow fucking their entire conscience out of the water if they do something bad. That you know. Gosh, that's where I get tripped up. Like,
I still think you're
like, how hard should I go? I think I should talk specifics next time I talk about that stuff.
I still think you're. Seems like you're still focused on punishment though, in
Well,
terms of
I mean, there has
changing
to be
people's
some-
mind.
Like, if we're just going to be isolated from people who do bad things, I think the only way to isolate them is to make them afraid that they'll be punished. You know, like, if it's like, well, I'm just not going to be around people who murder. People who murder love that kind of philosophy because those just, oh, hey, blah, blah, blah. And they put on this show, they fucking kill them, and they're like, oh, I fooled them and I killed them. Get shit on.
I don't
you
know if that's.
But if we're all like, dude, you can't even think because, you know, you can't even fit in, you can't talk to anyone, you can't even be alone in peace because of what you did or are not sharing with the world that you should share with the world, that's far more humiliating. And I think, like, a more revolutionary way of looking at your life.
How are
than
we going to
going to
impose
prison.
that
It's
guilt?
like, oh man, wow, I really have no power compared to the majority. I have to fit in.
Because
How are we? Well, I don't know if we should force people to assimilate necessarily. I mean, that's part of what makes humanity beautiful is our differences.
This is literally Right now we have to think about God. We have to think about ISIS. We have to think about rapists. We have to think about schemers. We have to think about thieves.
Is
We have to
ISIS
think
still a
about
big
fucking
thing?
every
honestly
rapist,
don't know.
murderers. Like, oh, shout out TV baby from TikTok. Anyway, if this is the Majoran paradigm, we would. It's almost like a hurdle that the humanity has to go through because once it's so ingrained, you might talk about it once throughout your entire life, and then you never have to talk about any of that stuff ever again.
Mhm.
So I guess you would almost reach this state of nirvana that encompasses the entirety of humanity. Is that sort of what you're going for?
It's kind of what it feels like. I don't know anyone that feels confident enough to kill me. Obviously, they wouldn't.
I mean, if you
Make
did,
it so
probably
public
wouldn't be
because they're little
alive.
bitches. So the Majoran paradigm, like, what are you gonna do? Like, what if this stays around? Like, they don't fucking know. This is a good idea.
My concern is that, again, from the day that man started thinking, he was trying to think of what was right and wrong. And it's been hundreds of thousands of years and we still haven't thought of
Say, and
something.
you
If
could.
someone decides, I'm gonna fucking kill JJ, I don't even care. Because that can already happen.
Just the problem with getting this singular view is that even if you have two identical people and you raise them the exact same way throughout they go 18, 30 years, they still have their own thoughts and could come to different conclusions based on even if everything was the same throughout their entire life.
Think about how much variety is in the universe now, though. You could be born at a different time, you meet different people are alive during your life. We would really have to be born in a society like that for that to continue. But since we're from Earth, where everything's random, I don't think it's possible.
Okay. It actually reminds me, when you mentioned someone killing you, I have a funny story about that. When I was in college for that brief period, there was a guy that loved to argue with me. And I loved to just give him shit because he was a little know-it-all. And I told him that I was immortal. And he was like, no, you're not. You're not immortal. And I was like, then kill me. That's the only way you can prove me wrong.
Wait, have you seen Stab Me Lad?
No.
Funniest YouTube video I've seen on the entire planet. These three British guys are over a bridge, and one guy's recording. One of the guys got a knife out, he's yelling at the other one. And he like slashes at his jacket. He's like, stab me, lad. Stab me! Stab me, lad! He's like, stab me! Stab me, lad! And the dude's like he doesn't know what to do. Oh my gosh. Look up Stab Me, Lad. Oh,
I might have to do that.
funny as shit. I don't know if it's fake or not, but I was fucking dying, dude. It's so funny.
But yeah, that guy, he was one of those guys where, like, and I was coming at him with this philosophy of like, if you haven't actually done it yourself, how do you know it's real? Like, oh, you haven't been to Rome. How do you know it exists?
So like a little Cartesian
Yeah.
philosophy right there.
And that just like screwed with his mind so much. And I loved it because he was like, he didn't know how to argue with me.
No, that's genius though. Like,
Because he's like, well, I was like, yeah, prove it. If everything is so empirical, like you're taking it a matter of faith that Paris and Rome exist. I mean, you've never been there yourself.
I guess we gotta go there and find out. And then you could be like, if we didn't go together, you'd be like,
yeah, I mean,
how do you know that just wasn't a dream?
the only experiences you can prove are the ones you've had yourself.
Exactly.
And then you can get into the whole last Thursday thing.
Yeah. And I was like, yeah, reality is such an interesting thing.
I mean, you can only empirically sense what you can experience through your senses, and how can you trust that even those are
Yeah, we
displaying
perceive
what's
the entire world through our own senses, and how do we even trust our senses?
Yeah, like are we picking up what's actually happening or not?
Who was it that said cogito ergo sum?
I think therefore I am.
Yes.
That was Descartes, wasn't it?
I think so.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the only thing that we really know is that our mind exists because we can think.
Mm-hmm.
Except when you're having sex, though.
I mean,
It's only giving you that
Be-
glug Power Grip 9000.
could be
You
your
know there's
imagination.
more shit going on than in your mind. You're like, holy shit, where the fuck is this coming from?
In your head. But again, like, what if you are humping the air, but your senses are telling you that you're having sex?
I guess that's true. Yeah, could be anything.
This could all be whose dream is it? This could all be a butterfly's dream, and
God's dream. It's an alien's dream.
and that butterfly could wake up tomorrow and not remember any of this.
We just know where we are. Alright, guys. That's all we got for this episode.
It was good. Good discussion.
Good discussion. Glad you guys were listening. Bye.